Good evening. This is Pastor Lew Burns of Abundant Life Baptist Church here in Naugatuck, Connecticut, and we are studying Genesis chapter 37 and 38 in our walk through the Bible. Most of the rest of Genesis deals with Jacob and members of his family, especially Joseph. Jacob, chapter 37 and verse 1 tells us, "And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan." So Abraham sojourned in Canaan, as did Isaac, and Jacob was dwelling in Canaan there. And if we go to Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, chapter 9, book of Hebrews and chapter 11 rather. Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 9. "By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise." So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob dwelt in various places in the land of Canaan. And we saw last week how Jacob and Esau parted company, Esau moving to Edom and Seir, Jacob dwelling still in the land of Canaan. And verse 2, "And these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report." So Joseph, being one of the younger sons, next to the last, Joseph also being the son of Rachel, Rachel being Jacob's favorite. But he is out there feeding the sheep with his older brothers, and his older brothers must not have been doing as they should do, probably having a little too much fun, a little too much eating, not moving the sheep as they ought. But Joseph brought back to his father an evil report of his brothers. And if we go to 1 Samuel chapter 2, 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 22. 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 22. "Now Eli was very old, and heard all that his sons did unto all Israel, and how they lay with the women that assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he said unto them, Why do ye such things? For I hear of your evil dealings by all this people. Nay, my sons, for it is no good report that I hear. Ye make the Lord's people to transgress." So Jacob's elder sons are not doing as they ought. And Joseph brings report to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. So, Jacob had a favorite, and the favorite was Joseph. And he made him a coat of many colors. A coat of many colors. This would have been a pricey coat to have. One that was not just one color or two colors, but a coat of many colors. A very fancy coat. And if we go to Genesis chapter 44, Genesis chapter 44 and verse 20, And he said unto more, My Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one, and his brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. Now they didn't realize when they were saying that they were talking to Joseph. After a long period of time, they were speaking to their brother Joseph. But we'll see more of that shortly. Jacob had sent his son. He made him a coat, and when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. You know, their own brother, but there's this jealousy. There's this terrible, terrible jealousy already. You know how brothers are if you've got one or more. You know, there's always a rivalry. Well, you know, Mom likes you best. No, Dad likes you best. It's always an attention, you know, vying for attention. At this point, Jacob had 11 sons and daughters. He had also daughters. And his sons, but Joseph was special. Joseph was special. And his brothers couldn't get along with him at all because they were jealous of the way their father loved him and treated him. So if we go on to Genesis chapter 49, Genesis 49 and verse 22. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. Well, this is talking about his brothers. Joseph, even in bad conditions, God blessed him, much as he blessed his father when his father was mistreated by Laban. Joseph is a fruitful bough, and his branches aren't held by a wall. They're not held back. They extend very far. The archers, his brothers, have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him. If we go to 1 Samuel 17, 1 Samuel 17, and verse 28, and Eliab, his eldest brother, this is David's eldest brother, heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. He said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the haughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. David's brothers, his eldest brother there, was trying to say, What are you doing here? Why did you come down? Well, his father sent him. But why did you come down? Why are you here at the battleground? Why are you here at the camp? So David's brothers were not on his side either. If we go to John chapter 7, the Gospel of John, and chapter 7, and verse 3. Now these are Jesus' own brothers, his half-brothers. It says, His brethren therefore said unto him, Depart hence, and go into Judea, that thy disciples also may see the works that thou doest. They're not being kind to him. They're not speaking highly of him. They're just, go on, move along, go back to Judea with your disciples. You can show them what you want to show them. They were not, at that time, Jesus's fans, if you would, Jesus's disciples. They would become so later. In verse 5, and Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. They hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren, well, first of all, this dream, his sheaf, his fruitfulness, his gathering of food in the field, his stands tall. And that of his brothers, in his dream, those sheaves fall over towards Joseph's sheep. They're falling over, they're bending over, they're bowing down to Joseph's. And they were not happy. They were not happy. Who do you think you are? Type of thing. And we go on to Genesis chapter 42 and verse 6. Over to Genesis 42 and verse 6. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And they didn't even know it was him, because he was in Egypt at the time. We'll find that out more later. And drop down to verse 9. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, ye are spies. To see the nakedness of the land are ye come. You're just spies. He's goading them on as they had goaded him on. He remembered the dream where they were bowing down, their sheaves were bowing down to his sheep. God had foretold what was to happen. He had given an idea of all the things to come to Joseph. So in verse 8, and his brethren said to him, shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Who do you think you are, Joseph? And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, behold, I have dreamed a dream more, and behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. Sun, the moon, representing his father. The 11 stars, his brothers, made obeisance to bow down to him. Again, he's being told this is what's to happen. And he told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? Well, yes. And his brethren envied him. They were jealous. They wanted to be important. They wanted to be the one chosen. Each of them. But his father observed the saying. His father took it to heart His father thought about these things. Is Joseph really going to be the one? Remember that Jacob, who God called Israel, was the younger. And Joseph, at this point, is the youngest of his father's children. So if we go to Daniel, we go to the book of Daniel, another dreamer. God gave him dreams and gave him the interpretation of others' dreams. Go to the book of Daniel and chapter 7 and verse 28. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 28. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. The things that God revealed to Daniel, his thoughts about it, disturbed him. And the way he looked at things changed because of what God had told him would happen. But he kept the matter in his heart, much as Jacob kept the dreams of Joseph in his heart. If we go to the book of Luke, chapter 2, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, and verse 19. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart, what the angel had revealed about the birth of Jesus. She kept them in her heart. And verse 51 of Luke 2, and he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. This is when Jesus was in the temple at 12, and he spoke. Did you not know, wist ye not, that I must be about my Father's business? That's verse 49. She remembered, and she kept all these things in her heart. If we go on to Acts, book of Acts, chapter 7, book of Acts, chapter 7, and verse 9. Acts chapter 7 and verse 9. And the patriarchs, moved with envy, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him. So the brothers, his brothers, sold him into Egypt, but God was with him. We'll see this in a few verses as the chapter moves on. So Genesis 37 and 12. And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Remember Shechem from a few weeks ago. His brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said, here am I. He said to him, here am I. You want me to go someplace and do something? I'm ready to go. Just like when God spoke to Abraham. Ready to go. Here am I. Note that verse. Note that phrasing. You will see that phrasing many times in Scripture. Here am I. And he said to him, go, I pray thee, and see whether it be well with thy brethren and well with the flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. He sent him out to go to Shechem to see where what his brothers were doing. His father wanted a report of what was going on with the flocks. If we go to Joshua chapter 14, Joshua chapter 14, and verse 14. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, unto this day, because he wholly followed the Lord God of Israel. Hebron, remember, Hebron is near Shechem. He blessed him. He blessed him. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb. Things are moving along. Things always go hand in hand. So in verse 15, he's here's Joseph in Shechem, and a certain man found him. And behold, he was wandering in the field, and the man asked him, saying, What seekest thou? What are you doing around here? Where are you going? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, They are departed hence, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. So they had moved from Shechem. They had moved on to Dothan. 2 Kings 6:13 also mentions that. We go to 2 Kings and 6:13. And he said, Go and spy where he is, that I may send and fetch him. And it was told him, saying, Behold, he is in Dothan. That is where David himself went later on to Dothan to hide from Saul. Verse 18, and when they saw him afar off, here's his brothers tending the sheep, and they saw him coming, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. All right, here's his brothers. They don't like their younger brother Joseph. They figure his father sent him to spy on him, to spy on them, to see what they were doing, which is true. But they conspire. Here's the brothers. They're conspiring to slay. They were so jealous. They're conspiring to slay him. If we go to 1 Samuel 19 again, 1 Samuel 19 and verse 1. And Saul spake to Jonathan, his son, and to all his servants, that they should kill David. David, that we just read, was hiding in Dothan. If we go to Matthew chapter 27, the Gospel of Matthew chapter 27 and verse 1, and when the morning came, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And if we go to Acts chapter 23, Acts chapter 23. Here we have the Jews conspiring against the Apostle Paul. Acts chapter 23 and verse 12. And when it was day, certain of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under a curse, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. Paul, who had become the apostle Paul to the Jew, to the Gentiles. Apostle Paul to the Gentiles. Verse 19 of Genesis 37, And they said one to another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. This dreamer who says we're going to bow down to him. Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him and cast him into some pit, and we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. Well, we don't know what else we can do with him, so let's go ahead and we'll just kill him now and just say some beast got him. We go to Proverbs chapter 1, the book of Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 11. If they say, Come with us, and let us lay wait for blood, let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. And then drop down to verse 16. For their feet run to evil and make haste to shed blood. Those verses fit. Those verses fit these boys, these elder sons of Jacob, the patriarchs of Israel. And Reuben said unto them, verse 22, Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. Let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands to deliver him to his father again. So Reuben is thinking rightly, don't kill him. We'll hide him away. We will hide him away. Let us not kill him. I'll hide him away, and we'll deliver him. I will get him back to our father. We go to Genesis chapter 42 and verse 22. Genesis 42 and verse 22. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child? And ye would not hear? Therefore also his blood is required. You wouldn't listen to me. You wouldn't listen to me. Verse 23 of Genesis 37. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him, and they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. So here we have Ishmaelites going to Egypt to trade, coming down from Gilead. And if we go to Proverbs chapter 30, again to Proverbs chapter 30 and verse 20. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. I'm in the wrong. I'm sorry, that's not it. That's not it. I apologize. So they took him, cast him into a pit. They're going on. They see these Ishmaelites, these traitors. So verse 26, Judah says unto his brothers, Judah says unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother in our flesh. And his brethren were content. They were content. They were going to just sell him. Yeah, let's make a profit. Well, let's get rid of him, and we're going to make a profit while we're doing it. We go to Genesis 42 and verse 21. Genesis chapter 42. And they said one unto another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. That's the price to betray Jesus. Things don't change. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. So verse 29. And Reuben returned to the pit, and beheld Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. He thought something had happened. He thought his brothers. And he returned unto his brethren and said, the child is not. And I, whither shall I go? Well, they took Joseph's clothes, and they took Joseph's coat, and killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father, and said, this have we found. Now know whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it, and said, it is my son's coat, an evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. So the trick worked. They did tell their father. They made their father assume that their brother Joseph was dead, that he would never see him again. And Jacob rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son many days. He mourned for his son many days. He could not be consoled. If we go to Genesis chapter 42 and verse 38, And he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. I will die. I will die if you take my youngest son Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, to see Joseph to Egypt. Although they knew not that it was Joseph yet. They did not know that it was Joseph. But he's still mourning Joseph. He's saying, my youngest son, the son of my old age, he's not going down with you. Not at all. So going back to 2 Samuel, 2 Samuel chapter 12. 2 Samuel chapter 12. And verse 17. 2 Samuel chapter 12 and verse 17. And the elders of his house arose and went to him to raise him from the earth, but he would not, neither did he eat bread with them. This is David mourning his son. This is David mourning his son. In verse 36. And all his sons and daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, For I will go down to the grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him, for Joseph. He mourned. His sons came around. His daughters came around. They tried to comfort him, but he refused. He could not be comforted. In verse 36, we see Joseph's fate. And the Midianites sold him unto Egypt, unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's, and captain of the guard. And if we go and turn over to chapter 39, which will be presented next week. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. So Joseph was no longer amongst his brothers. He was no longer his father's, but being his father's favorite, his father mourned greatly. These other young men had done a great harm to their father, Jacob. And so we continue in chapter 38. And the story changes here for a time. It changes to a different betrayal. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. Now here he's going, and we go to 2 Kings. 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings chapter 4. And verse 8. 2 Kings 4 and 8. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. Well, this is the same area. Same area. And Judah saw there was a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went in unto her. So Judah, one of the sons, is turned in. He's coming to a daughter of the Canaanites. And she conceived. So he's having children by her. And bare a son, and he called his name In verse 4, and she conceived again, and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. So if we go on to Genesis chapter 46 and verse 12, Genesis 46 and verse 12. And the sons of Judah, and Onan and Shelah, and Pharez and Zerah, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan, and the sons of Pharez were Hezron and Hamul. So these sons, and Onan, were born there. Second, go on to 2 Kings. Back to 2 Kings chapter 4. No, let's not. Go to Numbers 26. Numbers chapter 26. And verses 19 and 20. Numbers 26, and verses 19 and 20. The sons of Judah were and Onan, and and Onan died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Judah, after their families, were of Shelah, the family of the Shelites, of Pharez, the family of the Pharezites, of Zerah, the family of the Zarhites. They continued in their families. We move on through. And she yet again conceived in verse 5 of chapter 38, and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Chezib when she bare him. So this is the third son. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, Go unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his, and it came to pass when he went into his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest he should give his seed to his brother. That was his duty, to raise up a child to his brother's inheritance. And what was it? He was greedy. He was greedy. We go to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 25. Deuteronomy chapter 25. And verse 5. And verse 5. If brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her, and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. It's set. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother, which is dead, and his name shall not be put out of Israel. There was a reason for this. There was an absolute reason for this. And it's even mentioned in the Gospels in Matthew 22. Matthew chapter 22 and verse 24. Saying, Master, Moses said, if a man die, having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up a seed unto his brother. And then they proceed to speak to Jesus about 7 brothers and 1 wife. But this was the way that the lineage was preserved in Israel. But here, Onan, he didn't want to obey God. He didn't want to do what he was supposed to. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. He slew him also. Then said Judah to Tamar his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at thy father's house, till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, lest peradventure he die also as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Shelah was a little too young to assume the duty at that time. So if we go to Leviticus 22, Leviticus 22 and verse 13. But if the priest's daughter be a widow or divorced and have no child and is returned unto her father's house, as in her youth, she shall eat of her father's meat, but there shall no stranger eat thereof. So in other words, she cannot be married to a stranger. And if we go to Ruth chapter 1, Ruth chapter 1 and verse 8. This is where Ruth's husband, Naomi's husband, and Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, go return each to your mother's house. Each of their husbands was dead. Naomi's husband was dead. Ruth's husband was dead. Orpha's husband was dead. Go return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. She's giving them a blessing, so go back to your parents' house. Stay there being widowed. So in verse 12, and in process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died, and Judah was comforted and went up to his sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira, the Adulamite. So in process of time, over time, his wife died, daughter died. He was past the mourning period. He was comforted and went to his sheep shearer to Timnath. We go to 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel. Second Samuel chapter 13. And verse 39. 2 Samuel chapter 13 and verse 39. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing he was dead. David longed to see his elder son Absalom, who had killed his younger son because of evil which he had done. But he could not. Yet he longed to see his elder son. But here we have further betrayal. Verse 13. And was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And going on, and she put her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. He was supposed to have married her. And Judah promised that she would be married to him. But he did not fulfill both the law, nor did he even speak to her. So here she wrapped herself, sat in an open place. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. Now, if we go to Proverbs chapter 7, Proverbs chapter 7 and verse 12, verse 10 rather. And behold, there met him a woman with the entire of an harlot and subtle of heart. And drop down to verse 12. Now is she without, now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner. She was waiting for her father-in-law to pass by, dressed in a certain fashion, because he had not fulfilled the duty by giving his youngest son to her, for a husband. And he turned into her by the way, and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? What pledge shall I give thee? She said, Thy signet and thy bracelets and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. So the duty was actually fulfilled, although in a very roundabout manner. Not the way it was prescribed, not the way it was supposed to be done, not the way things should have happened. We go to Ezekiel chapter 16. Ezekiel chapter 16. And I believe if you have the notes, there's a typo there. Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 33. Not 38, it's 33. They give gifts to all whores, but thou givest thy gifts to all thy lovers, and hirest them, and that they may come unto thee on every side for thy whoredom. But that's not what is happening here. But she has these items from Jacob. And she arose and went away, and laid her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood, And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adulamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. She'd gone home. And he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. There was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. I sent what I said I would send. And it came to pass, about 3 months after, that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth, and let her be burnt. Well, there's the hypocrite. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 21. Leviticus chapter 21 and verse 9. Leviticus chapter 21 and verse 9. And the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the whore, she profaneth her father, she shall be burnt with fire. There is what he's working on this theory. Bring her forth. We go to Judges chapter 19. Judges chapter 19 and verse 2. And his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him unto her father's house to Bethlehem, Judah, and was there 4 whole months. That's not what Tamar did. Tamar simply went home. She simply was having the duty fulfilled, not in the way it was intended, but having the duty fulfilled. Verse 25 of Genesis 38. When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the men whose these are, am I with child. And she said, Discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet, and the bracelets, and staff. She sent back his own things to him. He was trying to judge her when he himself was being judged. And Judah acknowledged them and said, She hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son, and he knew her again no more. There was no more. None of this would repeat itself. We go to 1 Samuel 24. 1 Samuel 24 and verse 17. 1 Samuel 24 and verse 17. And he said to David, Thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil. That's Saul to David. The rewards, the things that are happening. We continue in 27. And it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that, behold, his brother came out. And she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. His name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother, that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So Going on to Numbers chapter 26. Numbers chapter 26 and verse 20. And the sons of Judah after their families were of Shelah, the family of the Shelites, of Pharez, the family of the Pharezites, of Zerah, the family of the Zarhites. And they're mentioned again in First Chronicles. These sons that came forth of Judah. In these chapters, we have seen God revealing the future to Joseph in a dream. We've seen the jealousy of the sons of Judah, the future heads of the tribes of Israel, the patriarchs, the jealousy, the scheming, the sale of their brother, the deception of their father. Sold their brother to slavery and then told their father he was dead. We've seen one of the sons turn into a Canaanite woman, have 3 sons, marry off the eldest, and the 2 older sons did that which was evil in the Lord's sight to the point where he destroyed them. They died. And yet Tamar bare sons from Judah, from her father-in-law. Judah's firstborn. Her father-in-law Judah. She got what was coming to her in the 2 sons. But deception had to play a part. Deception played a part in Jacob, Israel's grief. Deception played a part in his sons' dealings. Deception came upon Judah because he would not fulfill the law. And grief upon all of them. Now we'll see what God had in mind for Joseph starting next week. His brothers meant for evil. We shall see what God had in mind for Joseph. Thank you, and good night, and God bless to each and every one of you. John?